Yo, what's up, dude?
What's going on?
How we doing?
We're great. It's cloudy
Well,
and cold
I was
finally.
gonna say, you could be honest. What are we, 2 weeks into the baby now?
3.5. We're
All
going
right,
on almost a
you're
month.
moving along.
Yeah. Today's a
Yeah,
little
dude.
tired. Last
I was
night
gonna
was
say
a little rough.
you look a little tired. What were the? Give me like the feeds last night.
Well, didn't go to bed till probably midnight, and then up
Yeah,
from 2:30 to 4, just crying and
yep, that's a rough one.
hungry, and hence why I look pale on this because I haven't seen the
Yep,
sunlight in about a month.
yep,
But
yep. Yeah, dude. So Beckham will be 2 on Friday. I mean,
that's
but dude,
awesome.
his first 3 weeks, really, honestly, his first 2 months, like we could not get him to even just sleep for that until like 11 p.m. Or like midnight, and then he would wake up again, just like you described, like two, and then it would just be like 2 to 3, and then like he'll go down for 30 minutes, 3 to 4, and so like we just had to learn. It's so hard on the first one, but like on that, like when you get to like the morning, like the wee hours, right? Like you get through the four. When they're sleeping during the day, you're like, oh, they're finally sleeping. Like let me
Right.
just like try your hardest to do whatever it takes to keep them up. I know it sounds like everyone says it to you. It sounds crazy, but Preston, our second, now he's 2 months. As soon as he got home, we're just like shaking him around and
Yeah.
like smack him in the face, like, oh, stop.
Yeah. Yeah. See, we're learning that, and it's funny. I'll get home. I'm at the office today. I'll get home around 5 ish, clean up a few things, but the baby will be awake when it's my time to hang out with her, which is great. But then on the weekends, right, you want her to kind of be chill and not be moving around. She's sleeping with my wife, and I'm like, okay, well,
Yeah, yeah, man.
that's
It's hard, dude. Honestly, just like everyone says this, like enjoy it or it goes so fast. I will say, I used to think that was crazy. I'm like, I need all of this. This is like crazy. I
for
need to
sure.
sleep. And now my boy is 2, and I'm like, oh man, like that time. We look back at pictures
This is
of him.
crazy.
We look back at pictures of his first month or two, and we're like, that time's gone.
Yeah.
Like we're not getting that back, and he's just gonna keep growing. And so this one, we've been able to really enjoy him a little bit more. Of like, he's a little whiny, but like,
Yeah.
he's so small, like Um, so no, man, that's good. It'll start to. So one of my friends just had a newborn too. Their first, it'll start to settle down. Like, give it just the first 3 months. You're just in a dark tunnel. You just gotta
Well, do
figure it
you
out.
have do you have family here, or is it just you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we're lucky because we
My
have.
in-laws live around the corner.
Okay, so because we have my parents are retired, my wife's parents are
Yep.
retired, and so
Yeah,
they're
my
like
in-laws are
knocking
retired.
on the door. We have to make like a calendar.
Let them. No, let
Yeah,
them take the baby.
yeah.
Trust me, it's okay. You will have
They help a
you have
lot
18
during
you
the
got
day.
18 years to stay with the baby. You
Yeah,
let your in-laws and your parents take
yeah,
it. Like it's time that they want to spend too. So like
right,
let them take
right.
it. Well, good stuff, dude. All right, man. Well, thanks for jumping on. We've been, talking about this for a while. And you've been one of the people like super like, hey, let me get on, like, want to support. So like, dude, I appreciate it. And it's funny because we're kind of in the same boat. Like, we have both like have a lot going on. Like, you're the busiest man on the planet. Um, and so wait, before we really get into all this, I was really looking forward to this, and I know how you're going to answer. Let's tell the listeners, am I a better basketball player than you, or are you better than me? And I know your answer. We both probably suck now, but back in college, I
Well,
want to hear your answer about back in college.
let's. I'll answer that by saying we met playing in the club league or whatever at Ohio State. You were
Yep,
at your
yep,
fraternity, I was at mine. And I remember playing against you and that we had beaten everybody. We were beating everybody by 30, 40
Yeah, you
points.
guys were good, dude. You guys were so
And then
good.
we ran into you guys, and I ran into you, and you go down, score. You're bodying me in the paint. I'm shooting 30-footers because we're opposite games. I mean, look
Yeah,
at
you're
me.
draining them though, and I'm like trying to be
Yeah, so then
aggressive. We
you
gotta
get
like,
a little heated. Yeah, you're like, okay, this guy's actually decent. So then you start getting in my grill. I would say you're more athletic and physical, so you could have probably gone further in it, but I'm more shooting, hand-eye coordination, maybe. That
yeah,
would be the
you had
best
like a
way to
really
put it.
good like strategic game.
Yes.
Like you knew how to pick your spots. You knew like where, kind of gaps were in the
Yeah.
defense and where you could fit. I leaned a little bit more on athleticism, but I would still say I was like always like in high school and like growing up, I was always stuck in between positions. I
Yeah.
was like stuck between like the size of a point guard, but like the game of a shooting guard.
Right.
And I just, I could never really get it. And so like when we got to college, I felt like my jumper had like grown a little more, but like I had like no like mid range. Like I was either like
In
kind
the
of
paint or
going,
through.
yeah, I was either going or I was shooting a three.
Well,
Like
for the
I
audience,
always struggle with that.
well, I'll answer it directly. I give you the slight edge because you could guard all positions 1 through 5. You know, as you may know or not, I do coach basketball on the side at the high school. I think you hit it on the head. My knowledge and just angles of the game, I probably have on you. But if we were to put you on the floor in shape back in our 20s in college, I'd give
Yeah.
you the slight edge.
Yeah. No, and that was our problem too. We just like didn't have we were like a two-man like team and we were just trying to like it was like me and like one other guy we were just trying to like will
Yeah,
ourselves to like a
yeah,
win and you guys had like a complete team.
right.
And
Everyone looked
so
like me, 6'1", could shoot, and it was great.
yep. Didn't care who got the credit, just like
Right.
getting the game done and like
That's
so no
great.
man, that was like
And then we teamed
like
up.
yeah.
We teamed up in
And we teamed
intramurals,
up
and we
and that
we
was good.
almost won a couple times. So
We did. We did. You know what's funny? I can't think of that guy's name, and like we'll move into stuff. But the guy who just like did not look athletic at all. I can't think of his name, but I
on our
mean,
team,
no, he was just playing intramurals. He might have been on your team. Yeah, actually, he started on your team, but the dude was shooting from like half court.
it makes me think if it was Jordan, and he could
It,
shoot literally. Oh,
anywhere.
you might be thinking of Jared Worm.
Jared Worm.
And if he
Jared Worm.
sees
That's
this,
yes,
yeah,
dude.
and
I saw him
he
at
was a
Easton.
crap.
I saw him
Yeah,
at Easton like a couple weeks ago, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I was like. And
yeah.
we just
He
like
got
knew like
family
right
now.
away.
He's probably just like us. Has 2 kids, family.
Oh,
Like he's
yeah,
like
I
six
told my
four,
wife.
6'5".
Yeah, I told my
Yeah,
wife when we walked away, I was like, that was one of the best basketball players on Ohio
yeah.
State's campus. That wasn't on the basketball team. This dude
Well, if he ever
was
sees
so.
this, yeah, he needs
Yeah,
to
we
get a
gotta send it
commercial
to
from
him.
you.
Yeah, we gotta send it to him. I was like, this
Yeah,
dude was filthy. Like
that's
he
awesome.
was so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So no, awesome, dude. But yeah, so like I always start with one of the first questions. When you were 18, getting ready to go to college, I know you studied economics at Ohio State, but like, what did you think you were going to do when you were heading into college?
I have 2 answers. Like my dad started his own financial planning company, so I was interning and doing like financial planning, insurance. I had my license through college. But quite frankly, I really had no idea besides that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I was book smart. I would just kind of get through. I think I graduated with like a 3.0, and that might even be me rounding up from a 2.
You're like, it's okay, we can
Let's
run.
be honest. Yeah, but I just kind of coasted through. I really didn't know. Straight answer.
Yeah, yeah, man. Did your parents steer you in any direction they wanted you to go?
That's a good question. So my mom was in the dental industry for 40 plus years, and I'm more of an extrovert. Like I thought about it, but I hated full blown studying in books. So like going the dental route or doctor route, that just wasn't for me. And then my
Yeah.
dad being kind of in the financial services, insurance, there's great money in that. And I know a ton of people that do that, that do very, very well, but it
Oh, for
didn't
sure, same.
it didn't get me going.
Yeah.
So they weren't able to really guide me at all, which being in college, that can scare you.
Yeah, no, and I think to your point, right? That doesn't really get discussed as much because even if your parents do guide you, but they're doing something you don't want to do, that guidance
Mm-hmm.
may not be as productive for you, kind of going into college.
Yeah.
Um, so like, all right, you're in college, you go into economics. Like, was there any part of you that, hey, I want to make a change halfway through, or you just like were kind of nervous and like stuck with it, and then say, hey, you know what, I'll figure out what I want to do like
Yeah.
after I graduate.
So I interned at a company called 21st Century. They're very, very small. I'm actually still in contact with a guy there today. He manages some money on the side. His name's Jameson Lett. I remember doing that for like 4 months, my junior or senior year, and I was just like waking up. Ugh, I don't want to train and read all these different insurance and licensing stuff. Like I realized that
Yep.
wasn't for me. And quite frankly, my senior year, I attended 2 of like those, the job workshops where you can go and see all these different jobs with the recruiting fairs. And I just started throwing my name into pretty much anything that had to do with sales. Because I was like, I'm an extroverted person. I don't know
Yep.
much about this. I'm graduating in 4 months. I'm just going to start to network and see what can
Nice. Okay, so that's funny because I was kind of like after the fact, like in the same boat. Like after I graduated, I kind of figured that out. But so you graduate and you're throwing your hat, name in a hat. Like, what's the next step? Like, where did you
So
end up landing?
not a ton of people know this, and I don't put this on my LinkedIn because it doesn't correlate to anything I've done, but I joined a company called New Day USA. They're based out of Baltimore, Maryland. And if you'll probably see them on commercials now. They do mortgage banking. So
Okay.
essentially I was going to be an enterprise mortgage banker. So what had happened, and not a ton of people know this, I moved out there at my first month out of college. Just I had lived in Columbus, Ohio my whole life. I was like, I need to change.
Yeah.
I need to do something different. Wasn't really tied down to anything. So I took a leap of faith, moved out there, and you have to go through a 3-month training period of learning the industry, which is super ironic because I didn't want to do insurance and studying all this stuff. So but I was so antsy to like have a job and try something new. So I went
Yeah.
through
You got to
this.
go back and tell people what
Yeah,
to do and like
yeah.
they got to
I
approve
went
of
through
it.
this
I know it,
three
dude.
month. Yeah, and I went through this training program, moved out there, U-Haul and everything. Was basically living paycheck to paycheck, and within 3 months, I didn't get my license. I missed the test by one
Oh, you
percent.
needed a license. Okay.
So you have
Yeah.
to get your mortgage banking license, and you had to score a 75, and I got a 74, and that kind of correlated to like
Yeah.
I am just not. I'm street smart, so I'm not book smart.
Yep.
But at the time, I'm only 22.
Dude, I would have never, because that's obviously the bucket I fall into, like without a doubt. I think everyone that knows me knows that. But I would have never guessed that about you. I would have thought you were like
No, I appreciate that.
super. No, seriously,
Yeah.
that's a compliment. I would have thought like the total opposite about you, and I appreciate you being vulnerable about that. That's why we do this because I think people see you're the founder now of your company and all these things, right? And they see that on either on a piece of paper or on LinkedIn, but they don't know these things.
Right.
And that was the reason why I started the podcast. Was like we need more people to understand that it's not just linear. Like we all battle with whatever our insecurities are, right? And
Right.
so that's crazy. So all right, I'm sure at this point you're like, my life's over. I don't know what I'm
Oh yeah.
doing.
So I called my mom. Like this was probably the last time I actually cried. Like don't get me wrong, I have an emotional side, but I called her. I'm like, I'm in debt at this point. I used all
Yep.
my money to move out there. It's probably September at this point, and I get a call from a recruiter who does recruiting in mortgage banking, and he's like, hey, basically what he did was anybody who didn't pass these tests, he had a relationship with these people, they would send him me, essentially. Didn't end up taking it, moved back home, just took out a loan, got a U-Haul and moved back to Columbus and lived with my mom for a couple months. And my buddy, Austin Sabrocki, who you may remember from college, if you saw him,
If I
that
saw him
name
for
was
sure,
probably,
probably.
if you saw him, you'd be like, oh yeah. He was at C.H. Robinson, which is a supply chain organization, large corporate, Fortune 500. They're one of the largest players in the industry. He said, I called him. I'm like, hey, do you know if there's any openings? He's like, actually, there is. I know you don't want to be in operations, but I can get you a job. You need one, right? So I just applied, interviewed, and I joined C.H. Robinson. It was probably around October or November of 2015. That's where it
Yeah,
leads us to. You might have
always.
further on that, but that's how I
Well,
kind of
it's
got
funny
into my
that.
career from there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you did that operation stint, and then ultimately you're like somehow within there, got back to what you wanted to do was more on the business development,
Yeah,
sales side, um, which is crazy because like, you know, luckily for you, you know your personality and you know what you're trying to or what you wanted to do. But I feel like a lot of times in that scenario where like, the reasons we began or I started the platform was like a lot of people don't know what they want to do or their personality at that time. And so like, you obviously communicate to someone internally, you network a little bit. Like, talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how'd you network this
it
out
comes from
over?
my dad. My dad, being in small business, he always would tell me never burn a bridge. Talk to everybody, regardless of who they are, what position. Just be kind to everybody, and if you make an impact on somebody, it'll come back around some ways
Yeah,
somehow. But kind of back to your comment about like knowing what I wanted to do, I really didn't at this point in my career. I was just forcing myself into a job because I am now 23 years old. I can't live at home.
yeah,
I
gotta pay the
need a
bills.
steady paycheck. So I just took the job. But going back to kind of your comment, it comes from my dad, just networking and caring about everybody. And I think you kind of know that from my college days. Like, yeah, I was really competitive playing basketball, but the moment I met you, you knew I was going to hit you up to play basketball or what are you doing? Like,
Yeah, yeah. And dude, we were all. I feel like from like the get go, we were just like boys. Like, I feel
yeah,
like it was because like you always want to like be around people who at that time, we're still in college and fraternity. There was like the ego thing, right? But like,
right.
I was really good about having. There's a lot of guys like in Teak who like just didn't want to like have other guy friends
Yeah,
outside of Teak. I was like BK, you. I was big on like the whole community. Like,
for sure.
one of my buddies is in over here, so I thought we did a really good job of that. And it's funny, so like you're in your business development role, like now you want to either make I think we all kind of sit in that boat where like, okay, you're at your first employer and you're like, I need to make more money, but like they're not gonna pay me enough to stay here. And so is that kind of like what brought you to go to like the next, either sales role or, because I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people deal with that challenge of like, how do I navigate, I think, I need to leave and go to the next place, or I need to be loyal to this place because of XYZ. And I feel like that is such a really difficult decision, and especially after the first employer. So, like, talk to me a little bit about like how you came to that decision to
Yeah.
go to the next employer.
So fast forward, I spent 5.5, 6 years at the company, made a ton of good relationships, wore a ton of different hats. Won't really get into the weeds, but it was a really important step in my career looking back on it. From 2016 to 2020, I was in the office every day. I was 8 to 5. I was clocking in and out. And like there were definitely days where I was like, probably shouldn't use the F word when we're talking right here, but you know
It's
what I
okay.
want to say. Like, what am I
Be
doing?
authentic. Yeah.
Yeah, like what the fuck am I? I would There'd be random days where like, what
Yeah.
the fuck
We
am I
all have
really
those
doing?
days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would see some of my buddies who had already kind of fast tracked making all this money, and I'm just like, what am I doing? But I didn't have really any other options. I didn't really know anyone else. I had kept myself in this circle, and like the benefits and the stock there was really good, and I at least was
Yeah.
financially smart enough to know that. So I just kind of did my time, and then after COVID, well, during COVID, I got to experience working from home. And honestly,
I
I see
got you.
COVID was a terrible time. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
it was kind of a blessing in disguise for me because it made me realize one, I don't need to be in an office to succeed. I'm
Yeah.
self-made. I'm self-aware, not self-made yet, but
You're
I'm
self-made. You're self-made.
self-aware. We're getting there. It made me realize I can manage my days without clocking in and out per se. And then
Yeah.
unfortunately during that time, we had to let go of some people on our team, which was still to this day, I hated that part because we did have some
Yep.
people underneath me that I had to let go. That was tough, and it made my days even busier. And I remember, and my business partner and co-founder of Armada, which we'll get into, we're really good friends outside of work. We were golfing in around March or April of 2021, and we kind of lead into Armada in a little bit. But
Yeah.
he was like, "Hey,
Let's
I'm
go
in
there.
recruiting. I know you're an extrovert. We do recruiting and supply chain. You don't have the experience, but I think you could be good at this. You should meet the owner of this company." And this was an 8-person company at the time. So I was like, okay, like, all right, now you got me thinking. So I started talking to everybody on the team at this company, and that's where things really started to take.
Yeah. So did you feel so when you that because that's interesting as well, right? I mean, most people would hear an 8-person company and be like, no way. Like super risk adverse. I would never make that move. Like you hear that, you would hear a bunch of people say that. What was it about that opportunity that made you think I'm gonna take a risk and go to an 8-person company?
It's a great question.
I hope I'm full of some okay questions.
That was a great question. I think it stems back to 2015 when I lived in Columbus my whole life and decided I'm just going to do this. Sometimes when I put my mind to something, I just do it and I don't really think of what could or could happen. And at that time, I started realizing that I'm a natural recruiter. I started, I had some questions from
Yeah,
the
I
team
would
members.
say that about you. Yeah, that's good. That's a good
It,
call.
and this would have been 2021, so I'm 31, about to be 32, so this would have been when I'm 28. So I'm already a grown man at this point. Really still not know what I'm doing, not knowing
Yeah.
what I want. I had this owner of this company ask me a question, and he goes, why recruiting? And I answered that question. I was the recruitment chair at our fraternity. I was always the person texting people who can play basketball. I was always recruiting
That's where I was gonna go.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was always recruiting the best 5, including yourself, and I don't want to make
You
your
got
head
me.
too big,
Yeah, I was gonna
but
say you got me. I
you,
was like, I'm
yeah,
in. I was like,
I would find the 4 best players, height, the 2 guard, the shooter. So I was
yeah,
always indirectly making plans with the social people in college. After college, hey, Thursday night football, let's text these guys. I got a poker turn. I was always the one leading the group chats.
for
That was
sure.
me.
You had friends in like very different
Yeah.
groups. You knew how to like I don't want to say like camouflage, but like you knew how to talk to people in different respective just
Which they
personalities
don't
and
teach you
disciplines.
that in college. That's
No,
more of
yeah,
just a
yeah,
natural trait
for
that could
sure.
come from me. And I like to, I never like to have one group of friends, like you said earlier. I always like to kind of be in the know with everything. Like, it makes me think of like MTV and social media, which is funny because I
Yeah, yeah,
never
yeah. Well, you just
stuff.
don't learn anything, right? Like you
Yeah,
only if you're with a specific group and you're closed off, you're just not gonna learn a bunch of
right,
different things about everyone. So,
right.
so when so he puts you on the spot and he's like, you know, you answer this. I think that's a really good answer. You answer really well. He's got to have some rebuttal. Like, what's the rebuttal back?
The owner of the company,
Yeah.
I don't really remember, to be honest with you. I think that
So he
moment
was
was
like, "Hey, come on board."
pretty much because I had 6 years of supply chain experience, and that's all they recruited. So
Oh,
the
okay. So yeah,
only
you were a pretty
thing,
good fit.
yeah, they only had to teach me how to recruit, which
Yeah, it's a
recruiting is
teachable
just
skill.
natural skill in
Yeah,
my opinion. It comes to you. There's certain people you have to act differently with, but I try not to change my personality too much. Like with you, I'm
yeah,
super excited, I'm energetic. I can dial that back with somebody. I can get a read with them fairly quickly. So back to
For
like
sure.
2021, it it just clicked. It worked, and that was the moment. I'll never forget it in June when I was like, this is the next step of my career. And just for like
Yeah.
people who might listen to this or just anybody out there, I had one job, technically two, but I say one job for 6 years. If it didn't work out for a year, back to like the risk comment, I could easily go back into the industry and get a job. So I weighed those options and was like, well, if I
Yeah.
fail at this in year one, I get fired or let go or I'm just not enjoying it, I'll just go back to what I've been doing for 6 years and I can easily get a job at that point.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, man. There's always, as long as you like, I think to your dad's, advice, right? As long as you don't burn bridges,
Mm-hmm.
you could always walk back across that bridge, and you don't really want to think in that way because then you're kind of giving yourself a plan B. But you got to think about it a little bit, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a part of it.
Yep.
Um, so all right, dude. Now I'm like, okay, now I'm really interested. You're in because I think I know the answer, and I want to hear what your answer is here because all right, you go into the gate person company, you're doing well. What makes you think I need to go build my own company?
It's a great question because in 2021, if you would have said, Blake, you're going to start your own
I
thing in
I know.
2024, I would have said, what? No,
Yeah,
you got the
it
wrong
always
Blake.
happens that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, things just took off. 21 hit my goal in the first 6 months. 2022 set an organization record in sales, and that was truly my first hunting type of position. Full
Yeah.
transparency, but we won't go back to those days. 2023 break that record, made a ton of connections through the owner of this previous company. He took really good care of me, but I also went out and did it myself. I
Yeah.
didn't stop working to an extent, but it was because I really enjoyed it. I found myself always on the phone at 7, 8 p.m. with West Coast people, just always available. That was the best way I
Yeah.
can describe it. At the end of 2023, a couple things just started to happen. Just like to your comment about burning bridges, I don't want to go too deep into some things that led me into this decision, but those things caused me to make the decision. And I knew after working with people closely in my network, speaking with my family, my amazing wife, allowing me to bet on myself, I was scared shitless. Excuse my French. But
You
in
have to be.
January, ultimately, what had happened was two of my best friends, Rocky and Alio Gasparo, who eventually I want you to have on this as well. Um,
Okay.
they had been slowly soliciting me to come over to their company to run their direct hire business, but they couldn't afford me. I'm just going to shoot it straight. At this point in my
Yeah.
career, they knew it.
You got a number.
Well, they started to catch wind of some things, and we start getting lunches together formally versus us just having a few beers playing golf as really good buddies.
Yep.
And they said, "Hey, we want to partner with you. How can we make this work?" And ultimately, they were the ones that got me over the edge to do this because no, John Lincoln and I did not start this company on our own. We're co-founders, but it is all our business. And essentially, they came in and invested and believed in what we wanted to
Nice.
accomplish. And that's kind of what
Nice,
led
dude.
us to frickin' November. It's crazy.
Yeah. I was gonna say, dude, you're close to a year in, right? Like a couple
We
months away from.
launched, so our official first day was January 29th, but we really didn't launch anything till the first week of March. So it's
Nice.
about 8 months, 8 to 9
Yeah,
months.
dude. Good stuff, man. Because and you've known me for a while too. I was the same way, right? Like, didn't, didn't super corporate, always been corporate. Like, didn't have an entrepreneur bone in my body. And you just, with the support, as you mentioned, right, of like those
Yes.
people who are close to you, who put a battery in your back and believe in you in ways that like you probably don't believe in yourself. That's the all it takes to like, catapult you into that venture, man. So, another half of the pod is like kind of talking more about some of the really early days of founding a company, right? Like obviously you were already in your industry, so you felt like there were gaps that either you could make better or carve out just a piece of your own business, and and there's enough market share that you could take. Talk to me a little bit more about like the early days when you're building the business plan, you're building, either looking at the TAM and who you're going to go after. What were some of the main struggles you felt like early days where you're trying to really crystallize the process and the go to market of like how you're going to build your business?
Yeah. So we really came together because we did not want to, and as people get into the business world, there's non-solicits, there's non-competes, and you have to, back to burning the bridge at the beginning of this call,
Yeah, especially in recruiting.
Yes, you never
They're
want to
big.
take things from people, especially when they take care of you. And I'm a firm believer in that. Sometimes I'm too nice to a fault, but the way we kind of structured it and how we went through it was John and I, we evaluated what do we think we can do to basically cover our investors and coming in to join us. So we didn't necessarily have to bootstrap. So you may end up talking to some people that founded their companies and they had to bootstrap and they didn't have a backing like we do. So we are extremely lucky and thankful that we had two people that I had grown multiple years of a relationship with to bet on us. But we kind of evaluated with their guidance as well. What's a realistic revenue goal? What are the operational costs that it'll take to get this thing up and running? And ultimately, how the heck are we going to bring business on considering we're just starting over? Well,
Yeah.
that's over 15 years of me generating relationships and networking in my personal life and just being a good person to people. I was able to quickly get people on the phone of like, hey, here's what we're doing. And I found out, I think the biggest thing that I've learned through this is that everybody wants to see each other win. You might not see
100%.
it every day. You really don't. I mean, social media blinds us to like, it's all this negative stuff. You think
Yeah.
people are always thinking negatively of you. I
Because that's what the
learned
news puts out. That's what they want you to
yeah,
see. Yeah.
I learned within the first month that people truly just want to win together. And we're only, I don't want to get too
No, I love it. I
psychological
love
here
it.
on this, but we're only on the earth for so many years. Like, why
Yeah.
not try to win together? And then that really just propelled us from there.
Man, I'm so glad you said that because I wasn't a part of like the founder community or anything like that right up until now. And I cannot tell you how generous founders have been in like helping me in my business.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it has blown me away how
Yeah.
much other founders, because they know how hard it is, and they know not even how hard the journey is, they know how hard it is to just start and have the courage to begin anything and build anything.
The hardest
And
part.
so it's literally the hardest part. Now that I've done it, now we'll see if it's successful and we build revenue and all those things. But like
Yeah.
building a plan, executing on the plan, and being willing to iterate on the plan are really the three components that like you have to do and
Mm-hmm.
are the hardest to do, in my opinion. Because now it's like for you, where you're at in your business, and same for me, it's like now since you've crystallized what you're doing, it's like now others can come in and help you be more structured or help you with go to market or help you with funding or help you, so those parts are still hard, but they're not as hard as like executing and getting going.
We do everything. So, like, you're kind of talking to me as a friend slash a recruiter, right? But behind the scenes, I'm wearing 18 different hats.
Yeah,
That
let's go
really
there.
takes a
Like
lot.
talk
Yeah,
to
I
me
mean, just
about like
doing the
the
marketing
business model.
plans. Yeah, and then marketing, sales, where do we want to be? How are we going to hire? When's the right time to hire? And
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
tough.
industry I'm in. I'm in the hiring
Yeah,
industry, and we don't even know when the
yeah.
right time is. It's so much
It's
easier
hard.
to
It's
guide a client.
nuanced. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there's been a lot of ups and downs too. That's why support is very, I've listened to a couple other your talks with other people, and having a support system around you, whether it's your family, your friends, it's so big because, I see stuff and a little off topic, but I wanted to touch on this because I think a lot of
Yeah,
people
dude,
go
let's do
through
it.
it. I never really believed in this whole mental health, like, if you think
Oh,
Andrew Luck,
dude.
for
Yeah,
example,
you're hitting
Andrew
on
Luck
one
went
here.
through this 2-year period. I'm just going to be honest. You look at that and you're like, guy is a baby. Like, what is wrong with you? You're making
Yeah.
millions of dollars a year, blah, blah, blah. Well, I
Yep.
completely take everything back that I said because I have
100%,
a
man.
beautiful home, a wife, now a kid, a family. I make good money. But I went through a pretty tough time through the summer months because business was not going well at all. We were still
Right.
doing well as a company, but I wasn't doing the same as I had been doing the last couple of years. And I took a vacation, worked basically the whole vacation, which my wife
Yep. That
hates me
never
for that
fails.
still.
It never
But
fails.
I came back and I got with John and our two investors, and we sat in a room, and I basically was like, guys, I'm struggling. And guess what? They were there to support me.
Wow,
They,
dude.
and that's when I really realized I have to take the time to just step away from the business and focus on
Yeah.
my mental health. So I know that's
Yeah,
a little
man.
outside of it, but
No, it's actually not, because it's huge. And so to your point, right? I've always been this like same as you, right? Like tough guy, like we
yeah,
gotta like get through it. I don't care how hard it is. Like let's grind through it. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. And honestly, man, like two under two right now, kids, wife, and family and extended friends and people call me. It's like I had the last month, man. Like and I'm just putting it out there as well. Like there was a 2 week period where I was just struggling.
yeah,
Like I couldn't put my finger on it. I couldn't figure out. Now I am doing a lot, and that was, you're doing a lot too, right? That's a part of it. But there are just weeks where like you can't put your finger on it. And I think what we're both trying to say is that's okay. Like it
yeah,
has to be accepted as like that's okay. And you don't always have to have an answer for why you're feeling that way. It's just you have to acknowledge it though. I think that's where I struggled, and I know you've struggled too, is like acknowledging it, taking ownership of it, and doing something that says, hey, I need to either step away, take a break. I need to take care of myself because if I don't, I can't take care of anyone else.
yeah. Your two kids, the business,
Yeah,
everything.
and they need all of those parties need you to be the best version, the
Yeah,
energized version of yourself. Like if I'm sick or if I'm not feeling good, like my son doesn't know that. Like he's like
yeah,
still doing what he's doing, right? And so like I just make sure that like I take stock of where I'm at mentally. And that's why like on the app, on the personality and behavior page, there is a mental health section. So for those out there listening, like there's a mental health guide on the app. We put 2 questions in each of the personality assessments. And they're not assessments, they're more of a guide. And it's more so that when you go into that page, like we have put questions in there in case you're like, I don't really even know how to ask myself, am I okay? Like, what are questions I should ask? And so we just put those in there as a guide. You press the question, and then the artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT
yeah,
function gives you answers. And now you have a framework where you're like, okay, there's 7 points here. Which one do I identify with more?
yep.
And keep asking yourself how to. So, like, that's my version of like what I wanted as an outcome is like and I just actually got that feedback from one of my friends' girlfriends at a wedding I was at in Boston this past weekend, and we put it in right away. After she said that, I was like, "That is
Yeah.
what I am dealing with that myself. We all deal with that. That's got to go in there." And so, yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing that because
For
it's
sure, and
tough.
it's the support system. I mean, that's the thing, and I think, like you said, that the tough guy, tough girl act, everyone's going through it. Don't let
Yeah,
that fool you, regardless if you're a W-2 corporate employee or a founder, 1099, paying yourself. Everyone's struggling through it, and you have to, if you don't have a support system, create one somehow,
yep,
some way, because
for
you,
sure,
you
man.
shouldn't hold it to yourself. And that really got me through it. And quite frankly, I mean, I was just telling over at lunch today, I'm as happy as I can be right now. Yeah, the business, we're getting a little slower right now, but guess what?
Yeah, and you're not
Business is
sleeping.
going to be there. It's going to be there tomorrow. It's going to be there the
Yep,
next day. Like nobody,
it is,
it's
man.
going to be just fine.
You know what? I learned a good like just like I don't know, I don't call it a framework, but just like a thought process and methodology around like what you just mentioned is more around if you look at what you're going through right now, a year from now, and you look back at this moment, you're going not you may not laugh, but you're going to be like, I'm alive. Like I'm this like that
Sure.
seemed really hard at the time, and now I'm okay. And I think that's just a part of life. Like it's okay to like be and there's a part of us because I struggle with this being like try to be a high achiever or whatever, right? It's like you put yourselves in situations that like challenge you and drive you and stretch you, but you forget how much it hurts to be
Yeah.
stretched
Yeah.
until you're in it. And I'm like, I went to start this company, you went to start your company. I'm like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
And then now I'm 2 months past that when I was thinking that, and I'm like, oh, like, okay, I feel a little better. And like, I think that's just the goal. It's like each month, like you might have a bad quarter, you might have a bad 6 months. You're like, but can I make this next 6 months just a little better? It doesn't have to be like, I don't have to be completely out of the woods. I just need to make progress. And I think if enough people felt like they were making progress, everyone would be a lot happier.
Yeah.
Versus like, I need to be here and everyone thinks I need to be here. So if I'm not here, I'm sad or I'm upset. When it really was like you were here and now you're here. That
Yeah.
is significant progress.
Right.
And I do a bad job about that. I need to focus more on my progress versus my destination.
Yeah. It's I think it's funny because the last 10, 11 years, I had no idea this is what I'd be doing. And when
Yeah.
I'm recruiting a lot of candidates, I can sense that they don't really know what they want to do. And even Gen Z people that I coached in high school that are now in college, they'll call me every once in a while and just check in with me, which I think is awesome that
Yeah.
18 to 20-year-olds nowadays
Yeah, that's
are
good.
checking in on me, which is pretty cool. But they're like, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, dude, how old are you?
It's okay.
And he goes, oh, I'm 19. I go, you're in Fisher business. You're doing SaaS at an internship at a SaaS company. You
Yeah.
are light years ahead of me when I was 19.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about what you're doing right now. Let me retract that. You should be doing things to progress yourself, but like the reality is you're probably going to be doing something different in 10 years than what you're doing right now.
100%.
Don't
It's
stress
so
out.
hard but it's so hard to, so like, think about that though, right? Like, think about how many people said that to you or said that to
I know.
me when I was 19,
Yeah.
and it's just our society, man. Like it's just what it is, right? And like I'll give you. So I had some like people I was talking to who had started companies and gotten venture and all these things, and they were pressure testing like my thought process on the business. And the question I kept getting was like, "What are you solving for? What are you solving for?" And I agree with it, right? And I couldn't really give it like a great answer without telling like more of a story. But really, what I'm solving for is like I want you to have to be able to make that 19-year-old person to be able to make a more data driven decision because you do have a platform that you can sift through your personality. You can look up things that are like a little more tailored to like what you're motivated by or
Yeah.
just all those things, right? And so and then the biggest piece is like I want to create an environment that is facilitating growth for a more certain future of that 19-year-old.
Right.
Because when I think about that 19-year-old, I think about a 19-year-old Deshaun or 19-year-old Blake
Yeah.
who went, or let's say 18, who went to a graduation party right after you graduated, and your friends' parents, and then there's like other friends' parents that you don't even know, and then they introduce you, and they're like, "Oh, well, you get the 15 questions hey Blake, what are you doing? Are you going? Okay, you're going to Ohio State. What are you studying? Oh, I'm not sure. I may study economics or marketing or whatever, right? And they're like, oh well, what kind of job do you think you'll do
Yeah.
like after that? And you feel like you need to have that answer at 19. And it's not, and I'm not like those parents, it's just a valid question. You're just asking and you're curious.
Who's curious?
Um, just curious. But to that kid, you don't really know that. You're like, oh, I'm being like pressure tested right now.
Yeah.
And now you have anxiety. You only studied something because it sounded cool or you knew it was going to make a lot of money. And realistically, you're not a doctor. You never wanted to be a doctor, but like
Right.
it
Right.
sounded great.
It sounded great, but no.
Yeah. And so I'm not kidding. I came to that conclusion 2 months ago and I never stopped. I was like, this is what we're solving for. And this is what's important to me. Like, I can stay in my job, make money as a sales rep, and that's fine. I like what I'm doing. But if I don't do anything, like, I have to attack this and see if I can solve for this. Because
Yeah.
I struggle with this. And every person I've had on has struggled with this. So I felt like there's the market for that. Like there are people who could use this. And like to your point, even like someone who's in corporate right now, like you want to either make a job change or career change, whatever it is, it's the same framework, it's the same methodology. You have to think through it the same way. And I think, that's the big piece is like, you said you watched the other episodes with the other people. I have had so many people come to me like in the same way and say, dude, I didn't even know that like X person was like that was their story. Like I just see it on paper that like he's the founder of his company and like you just assume that like a founder of any company is just like a gazillionaire. And
Which
you're
they're
like,
not. Well, and
or you think that they just started as a gazillionaire and like they didn't start
yeah.
from zero and like,
Well, I think it's important to notate too, because I actually tell this to my candidates, right? I probably talk to 10 to 20 different people a week. I mean, I am networking like crazy. I'm about to get to 10,000 connections on LinkedIn. It's not going to stop.
that's awesome.
You can also bet on yourself in a corporate organization. It does not have to do
100%.
with betting on yourself and founding your own company. That is not it at all. I actually use this term to my candidates that are going from big corporations to small or medium corporations. You can still bet on yourself. You don't have to be a founder
That
or a
that
co-founder
is
of a
betting on
company.
yourself.
Exactly. You're
I
making a
just
direct
did that.
change. Most of the people I recruit go from big corporate companies to 15 to 100 employee companies, and they always, I can sense it in their mind and how they talk to me that it's like, oh, what am I going to do? I go,
Yeah,
this is an entrepreneurial move for you. Like
it
this,
is. That
I,
is joint. That is you're joining as like a that. If you're in the first 15 people of a company, you're joining as a founder. Like
correct.
you are a founder.
Quite frankly, the first, in my opinion, I've worked with companies that have 10 employees. I've worked with companies that have 500. If it's a startup division within a big corporation, you're still
Yep,
betting on yourself. You're still giving yourself the ability to grow
for
and
sure.
build something within something that's already established. Semi kind of like what I've done, right? Yes, I have founded my company, but I wrapped what we're doing underneath a bigger company. So I alleviated some of the pressure from my family, but ultimately it's
Yep.
all me. I don't have the support.
Yeah,
I just have
they're
people that
gonna
get
answer to you. Got to answer to the. They're essentially investors, but like in a different,
right.
different vein.
And
But
I just
like,
want to make that clear because sometimes it does
yeah,
seem like, oh, I'm another drop. Because I made this comment earlier, a drop of the bucket. Don't take that as, oh, I shouldn't work corporations. You actually should. It has great benefits. You can work your
hundred
way up.
percent.
You can get this experience. If I didn't work at C.H. Robinson for 5 to 6 years, I would not be where I am today at all.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I feel like that gets a lot of bad press
Yeah,
in terms of like, no, you should start right out of school. I wasn't ready to start a company out of school. Like I
no,
just wasn't. And so it's funny because I went to Oracle, I went to AWS, and I
which
went
are
to Dell.
great companies. They're great
Great. And
companies.
I learned how to
Yeah,
be a world-class seller through their sales training programs.
and you
And
moved,
not only,
right? You
and I
didn't live
moved.
because I remember
Yeah.
you did one previously, and you talked
Oh, I
about
moved
being in
like
bigger
all over the
cities.
place. Yeah.
Exactly, and you did that. You bet on yourself, albeit it might not
That's a bet. That's a
seem
bet,
like you
man. That
founded a
is, yeah.
company, but you bet on yourself. You didn't have any family, or you might have had some friends there, but they're not making
That's a
you
bet.
money.
No.
You bet
And they're
on
not
yourself.
gonna pay my rent if I
Yeah,
can't if I
that's still betting
like
on yourself. That's not
yeah,
that should not be a generalized term that I have to start something from scratch. It's
yeah.
you just are taking a leap of faith to bet on yourself to
Yeah.
do something
We just
good.
want to facilitate like take risks, calculate them, right? Obviously, but like
Of course.
take them. And you don't need to have all the information and all the data to do it. Like
Right.
and that's the thing too. So it's funny because like if I didn't work at AWS for those 3 years, I could not have spoke fluently to my developer on how to build the mobile app
Yeah.
on the AWS
Yeah.
infrastructure that I needed. So
That's
like there's
crazy.
just so many and I wouldn't and also I don't think I would have had the confidence to even start it because I wouldn't have known even like how to go down or how to communicate it to investors or whatever, right? So I think, that's such a good point, man. You gotta be able to take those risks and don't downplay that it's, a
Yeah,
risk. I
don't
think
define it
that's
as
such a good
whatever. There's
angle.
billions of people in this world. Everyone has a different path. Don't
Yep.
define what your betting on yourself is compared to another person. I've got
Yeah.
people in my network that are Forbes under 30. My age, well, I'm above 30 now, but back in 2021,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
22, I was working for them as a recruiter trying to find them people. They were way smarter than me, but the cool thing about them was they didn't use that as like I'm a better person than you. They just took a different path, and good for them. I couldn't do that. I couldn't start a tech company. I couldn't do what you're doing, but I can do a recruiting thing because that's my thing.
And you know what's funny too? When you talk about that, like I started to think more about like all of it. You know how many times you see some like massive home in like POW and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, so this is a really good one. You know the house on 315, the castle, like the
Yes, it's the
massive
biggest house
castle,
in.
biggest
Yeah,
house outside of Wexner's house is the biggest house in Columbus. Pass it every day.
yeah. They own the toy barn.
They own the tour barn, but the guy, do you know how he like got like his like founding story? Like,
Maybe, but tell me.
I mean, and whoever out there in Columbus, I could be getting this wrong. Please correct me in some comments or something somewhere.
But Rocky
But
and Allier know this. They
I
are
was
the
gonna
ones
say,
that can confirm.
okay, I feel pretty confident about this story. So the guy founded a company that makes it's like the largest within its industry in the country. He makes the film that goes on the meat packaging at like Giant
You're
Eagle. So
100% correct. So
so
we can
so
confirm
yeah,
this.
everything you
They
see.
told me this.
All
Yes.
right, good. Okay, I'm not an idiot. All right,
Yes.
I did my research. I looked this up.
Yeah.
So yes, every meat package of like any
Crazy.
provider, the guy made the legit film that goes over the chicken and goes over the beef and like the pork chops, like
And that's the easiest little thing to think of.
and you think
And
about it, and someone's like, it's not a sexy business or whatever, like
yeah,
tech or something random or like recruiting. It's like, yo, this man created
that's
film for
the 100%.
like that is to me that is so impressive. Like that is insane.
If you can solve a problem, it's just like Shark Tank. If you can solve an everyday problem,
That's an everyday
it
problem.
doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a gold star. If you can
Yeah.
solve it, there's going to be a need for it. And for
There's a
me,
need for it.
specifically,
Yeah.
people need to hire. And that's for the
Yep.
problem I solve.
And also I think talk to people too about like I think you're told these stories about like Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs, and those are like win all type stories. But most of the people that guy I just described, or, anyone that you describe that like is living that way, they have won, let's say maybe 1% of the market or
Right.
0.2% of the market and enough to change their entire lineage, their
Yeah.
entire life. So you don't have to go take 100% market share to have
No.
a good life. Like you just
No,
gotta win a little.
100%. And that's kind of the back to working together and everyone winning together. It's not possible. I can't hire for every company, let
Yeah,
alone in the city of Columbus or Powell. So
100%, man.
that's also, we would go way too long for this, but I've also started to learn through this that not every customer is the right customer.
Yep.
At
That's
first,
why there's an ICP for a reason. There's an ideal
yeah, I
customer
wanted
profile for a
everything.
reason. Yep.
Yes, we'll help you hire. Yes, we'll do this. But I'm learning the hard way that that's not how you should do it.
Yep. Not all business is good business because if you
No.
take on a customer that is it looks like a big logo and it's a big undertaking, but like either the organization wasn't ready for the scale or they're just actually a support nightmare.
Yeah,
And now you're just operationally dealing with all their support tickets. You don't have enough time to go out and get the actual right, customer profile that like would have benefited you more
right.
longer term. But you don't know that at first, right? You're a founder and you're trying to like
You just want money. Yeah,
you
bring it
need
in.
revenue, you need to keep the
Yeah.
lights on. But those that can and now you've kind of you figure that out not even a year in, right? Like you're in retrospect,
We're
you're like,
still
okay,
trying to figure it out. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong. I still take
but
on negotiating.
yeah,
But
you've at
yes.
least figured out that like, okay, we need to at least think about this
Yeah.
in customer acquisition when we go to get a customer.
Well, I'm going to flip it because I want to talk about how I'm going to be the podcast host now for a second.
Oh,
And you didn't see
that's
this
a
one coming
suggestion. I did
because
not. I did
the
not.
reason that I saw you post about doing this, a lot of my clients in the industry I am correlate very strongly to what you are doing. And I do have,
Yep.
we can look at the editing of this later, but I am going to post this to my network at some point. I want you to kind of
Okay.
talk through what you're doing specifically because you caught my interest. Obviously, we don't talk every week, but we're good enough
Yeah,
friends
we
where
had a private for those listening. We had a private conversation about this, but we didn't get too into detail. Like a couple weeks.
yeah,
This was probably a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
probably about a month ago. I mean, you came up with your
Actually, yeah,
son.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying to get him to join golf,
yeah. Oh,
Kinsale.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Scared
yeah, yeah.
because
Yep.
he's not that good. I'm like, trust me, you'll be just fine. We like to have a beer too. It just
Yeah,
play with.
yeah.
We don't care, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, man. Well, it's funny because after I talk through this a lot, I never talk about the corporate angle, or my corporate like go to market. Um, and when I started it, it was mainly just for 18 to 24-year-olds that we just described minutes ago. Like, need to figure it out, want some data, but want to have fun, and relieve that stress of trying to find what you're passionate about, what you want to do. And I've also kind of changed it a little bit too. Like, I want it's a professional and personal growth platform that AI helps kind of enable on the back end. But at its core, but corporate me, I'm a corporate seller. I've been a corporate seller for seven
Yeah,
years. I love corporate selling. Like I can't imagine myself, even if I had my own company that went, and I was able to run it full time. I can't imagine myself not going into working with corporate employees, right? And so
yeah,
I say it more from on the corporate side. It's an HR function. When I was at Oracle, I sold into some of the largest Fortune 500 HR executives, just kind of calling in, getting meetings. Um, and so the platform will be more designed for an HR function that's centered around employee retention, number one, and then number two, employee satisfaction. I mean, those are the two pillars of like a corporate go to market for us. Um, Now, on the employee retention part, it's more around companies that struggle with keeping their year one to year five employees. Those are the hardest years to keep and retain your talent. You work so hard. You know how it is. You work so hard to get them. You throw everything at them. You throw the book at them. You get them. They're talented. They're great, but they're not bought in because there's not enough mechanisms internally to keep them bought in.
sure.
And so I will sell my software to HR functions, our HR leaders, and we will white label it. Let's say for example, it's like Nationwide, for example. We can go to the head of HR at Nationwide and say, hey, we'll white label this. This will be a tenant for Nationwide. Pull in and pay the license, whether it's $20 a month per user. Uh, Now, if we get to volume, obviously that shrinks down, 15, 10, whatever it is for volume, pricing. But uh, we pull in your year one and year five employees, and they come into the platform. And then on that personality and behavior page, instead of it being like the way I have it listed, like mental health, and we'll still have that stuff in there, but it'll be designed for the the role outcomes at Nationwide. So you'll still do those guides, you'll still kind of work through those things, but we'll have a separate page on there that has imported every single Nationwide role and job description globally that says, hey, based on the interest and things that you've been searching for, you would be a great fit for these organizations within Nationwide or these specific roles within Nationwide.
And then that's where my business mind starts to spin. Which, first off, that's freaking awesome that you're doing that this fast too. Like,
yeah, it's been 2 months, dude. That's kind of crazy. Yeah,
fast. It took
yeah,
us like 2 to 3 months to even see a dollar. So,
yeah. So it was 1 month, 1 month of just building and making sure my
yeah,
business plan was like concrete. And luckily for me, on the go to market side, I've been in sales. I've been in go to market. I've been in sales, like
yeah,
for technology sales specifically, right? So like I kind of knew what I wanted out of a go
right,
to market and what I learned. So that part was a little easier. Now structuring it and making it actually work is kind of
right.
really hard.
And what excites me about this, and not just only to talk through this and be on here with you, but I speak with so many candidates every week who really they aren't looking for a job and they don't really know what they want to do if they were looking for a job, and where I see this app being so awesome and partnering with a company like us, and yes, I'm soliciting myself and you on this one,
Yep,
but
we're in.
it's
We're in,
awesome because
dude.
I can pass this to a candidate of mine or anybody that, hey, I'm not getting you a job today. This is not a job application. Let's see where you really sit, and maybe you'll realize through this that you're very happy, and we shouldn't be talking great. I'm just here to help people, and that's where I
Yeah,
see a ton of value in this. Is that the nuts and bolts of what it does is it's helping people.
yeah, absolutely, man. And that's number one, right? That meant a lot to me because we talk about money and obviously all those things,
Right.
right? And I asked myself before I went down this journey, I was like, am I making enough money in my career right now where I feel like I can really just give myself to this with passion and like what I want out of it versus like, oh, if I start this company, I could be a billionaire. Like, no, I
Well,
truly
you never
said,
know, but I know what you're
that
saying.
would be nice if
Yeah,
but
but I get
you
it.
only become a billionaire though if you really change the world. Like, it's just, if I
Right.
can put it, that's oversimplifying, but you have to significantly change the world
Right.
to be a billionaire. And if I do that and that's a result of it, amazing. I can still, and then I'm a billionaire, I can go change even more, right? I can go give back and I can go build, an AI facility at my high school or some crazy things, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, but from what you just described, so I think what I described before that, the Nationwide example, that's more of a like, we customize that for Nationwide and like what they want. But what you
Hmm.
just described is even simpler and easy for us to do. I use this as an Ohio State example. This is what I wanted to essentially do at Ohio State is like, hey, you are bought in on this Ohio State. We'll put your logo at like your tenant or whatever it is, and let's say there's 50, or 10,000 students you want to pilot this with. You can pay the $10 a month per the student and build them back. And then we still implement some cool features that are like Ohio State focused or Armada focused that like, you know, put your spin on it, but we don't have to fully customize anything. We just kind of make some changes. Then we wouldn't really charge, you just would be like our customer, right? And like we would
Right.
like customize a few things. We may charge a little more, but like not more than the $10. So it's like, you can then charge back your candidates and say, hey, we've already investigated this, and this platform would be really good for you. We'll pay the subscription. We'll bill you back through our services if you feel like after the 6 months or like 12 months, like you're getting enough value out of it. Like there's a lot of things that like I'm still trying to figure out how to do that.
Oh yeah,
But
you'll
at a
look
high
like you
level,
said in 2026. You might look back at this and say, "Yeah, I don't know why I thought of that idea," but
yeah, like
you
that
just
might
never
take me down
know.
a
But I
whole,
like how you
yeah,
think about, and that's where I'm always thinking is like, because I'm in the industry to help people,
yeah,
and I think a lot of some people always ask me like, what makes you good at recruiting? And it's that I'm real with the candidates. I
yeah,
think there's a lot of people out there that try to force, and I use this analogy all the time. They try to force a square peg into a round hole. You can't do that. If you get a sense that you aren't interested in something, I can feel that, and I'm going to talk to you
yeah,
through it, and then we're going to still maintain a great relationship. I mean, I get the question all the time, how do you find these people? I'm not doing anything fancy on the back end. What I'm really doing is I'm growing a relationship with this person, and it stems all the way back to the first 10 minutes of this call of
yeah, man.
networking and caring about people and not just seeing them as another person that you'll never talk to again. So,
For sure, dude. All right, man. Well, hey, look,
yeah.
I think that's where we'll end it. I always end with the same question. If you could give a piece of advice back to the voices of tomorrow, what would it be? And I'll put you on the spot.
If you could give advice to the people of tomorrow,
Yeah,
what would it
we
be?
call it, so the podcast is called Tomorrow's Voices. I either say Voices of Tomorrow or Tomorrow's Voices, which sometimes sounds kind of like a mouthful. But if you could give back something to Tomorrow's Voices that you wish you would have told yourself at 18 to 24, what would it be?
I'd say it'd be slow down.
Mm,
Don't
yeah,
try to move too fast. Rome was not built in one day. I've
yep.
gone way too fast through life at certain points. Just slow down. Everything will happen and control what you can control. That'd
Wow,
probably be my
that's
best.
good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good one. Not what
Yep.
I would. I don't know what I would. I haven't even asked myself that question, to be honest. Uh, so good stuff,
It's a
man. Well,
good
hey, dude,
question. But that's the first
yeah,
thing I think of, and I like to, there's other things I could say, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind is just slow down.
yeah,
It'll
for
happen
sure,
for
man.
things happen for a reason. Um, and I look back at my 10 years, and a lot of different things have happened, good and bad, for a reason, and that's what led us to this conversation today.
Nice, dude. Well, hey, look, I'm gonna give you the same advice. Slow down. Enjoy this time with your child and your wife
Yeah,
and family. We're heading into a good time. Holidays,
yeah,
Thanksgiving next week. So honestly, take some time to recharge. I'm gonna do the same.
for
Guys,
sure.
it's not Mental Health Awareness Month, but that should be every month. We're gonna put it out there. Like,
We are.
just check in with yourself,
And then
and
in
I
March, you're
think that's a good
coming,
way.
we're golfing.
I'll probably join in. Hopefully, all things
We have a
considered, I'll
simulator
probably
now
join.
at the office, so we are building it at our office, third floor,
I'll
so
take you
you're
up
going to
on that.
come in the winter.
All right.
All right, man.
All right. Also, download Uzi AI out there, listeners. It's on the App
Yes.
Store. Download. It's free. If you want to pay, you can pay, but it is free. So awesome. All right, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Yep. See ya.